Hi everyone, welcome back to the Civrays InMoov. You should notice a slight difference with the robot. He's got his head back on and he's looking rather smart, if I do say so myself. This is going to be a long one, so I'll keep the intro short. We're basically going to be tearing down the head, solving a few of the issues, putting it all back together again and getting it assembled back onto the robot. Let's get into it. So here is the head, and the first issue I want to address with it is these gears in here are too tight. If I try and turn them, it's like really stiff. And I want to give the servo at least some chance of rotating the head. These are some of the very earliest parts that I printed. I think they just weren't very accurate, so probably just reprinting new ones would help sort that out a lot. So I think that's the first job I'm going to do. Seems hard to believe, it must have been like over 3 years ago when I built this. I always anticipated that this was going to be a very long-term project, but I think I'm about on track where I thought I was going to be. A lot of people seem to build their InMoovs quite quickly, but I think it just comes down to how much time you actually have to spend on it each day. So there are the gears we're trying to get access to. I can't actually remember how all of this comes apart. I think there's a collar on this one in here. There's a screw there we can just see, but I can't access it unless we can get to it through the ears. Yeah, probably could. Get the feeling I'm going to have to take the top of the head off though. I would like to do something with the paint job on this. I never finished it. I always intended that the whole thing was going to be painted. Although I have a lot of frustrations with mine as I'm building it, I think this really is a super project if you want to get into it. It's really quite interesting. I think that should come off, but it's probably just really tight. I think we will have to take the top of the head off. I'm not sure how this other gear comes out. I think it's screwed onto the servo. Probably these screws here are what we need to get to. So probably need to take the big servo out, which means taking a lot of this head apart. I think there's 2 screws already missing in the back here. I have a feeling something might be broken here. I'm not going to do too much work on this head. I just want to get it working. Can worry about the cosmetics of it later. Nope. So I can get to these screws, but there's 2 more down the front there, so I think we're going to remove these 2 front sections. That involves taking these out. I think this is probably where you would benefit from having a head in one piece or larger pieces rather than all these individual bits, for making it a little bit more maintenance friendly. But I am quite impressed with the way Gael has designed this in these small pieces so that you can print it on a small printer, making it accessible to a lot more people. Really quite ingenious how he's designed all of these parts. It's actually removing that front section hasn't really given me any more access because we're still attacking it from the back. It's like we want to remove this piece, but I don't think we can. So I've taken the jaw off. That didn't really give me any more access. Get this last piece off the top of the head. There might have been a better way of disassembling this.
think we're getting it. Okay, I must be missing something. Maybe we need to get that little black screw out of down there. That's the servo horn, I believe. Okay, don't want to lose that one. Okay, there we go. Right. Yeah, we'll put that to one side for the moment. So I think we can now remove these 4 screws and we should be able to get one of the gears out. I hope after all of this, printing new gears are actually better. There's one of the gears. It doesn't look like a very big part. Should be able to print one of them quite quickly. It's quite hollow actually. This top section here is mainly hollow looking inside there. And that's nothing to do with the infill, that's just how the part's designed. Yes, we should be able to print a new one of those. And the other one, I think the reason it wouldn't come out is that this collar on the top here has actually got 4 screws, not 2, so I only took 2 of them out. So if we take the other 2 out, that should come off as well. And I think when we come to reassemble, the important thing is to make sure the gears work smoothly before we proceed too far ahead. I think that is one of the big tricks with this robot, is make sure that everything is working properly before you sort of build it into the robot and move on to the next stage. Otherwise you're just going to come back and have to undo it all, like I'm doing here. But when I first started this project, I was really struggling with the printing. So I'm glad I did move on, because otherwise I would probably still be there stuck. Okay, so yeah, we've got a collar and a gear. So my aim is just to replace these 2 gears. I guess there's no need to reprint this collar. So this plastic was a bit weird because this was a natural PLA with no pigment colour, so it's kind of transparent, which I was intending to paint everything, so I thought transparent, you know, a natural PLA might print better not having pigment in it, but it actually seemed to print worse. I think the regular PLA, which is coloured like white or grey or black, seemed to print better than this stuff. Could just be cheap PLA. Yeah, I can actually remember spending ages filing out each tooth to try and make these things fit. So let's get some new ones. So I printed out a new gear and I've offered it up against the original one, and actually the new gear has come out a little bigger than the old one was, so I'm thinking it's going to be even tighter. I tried popping it in here and it's super tight, so it would need a load of filing, I think, to get that in, and I've already done that on this original gear, so I'm going to go back to this. I popped this back in here and it's nice and loose. I put the other gear in, and actually look, they turn really freely. Doesn't really seem to be a problem with them. So I then put on the collar back on here to kind of line the holes up. Press the collar down and then try to turn it, and it's super tight. So I think it's actually the collar that's the problem. Now I tried to sort of release it a bit. You can just push down on the gear a little bit. I've kind of over exaggerated it there, but it's sort of now loose because I've loosened the collar. And again, it's turning nice and freely again. So I think the trick is to make sure the collar is not too tight. Now I tried to leave it kind of loose and then screwed in the screws, and it just sort of bound up really tight again. So I think we actually need to file a little bit off the bottom of the collar to sort of try and make it a bit freer after it's screwed in. So I think we just need to sort of sand down one face. That's my idea anyway. I'm not sure if the collar is... You would presume it's symmetrical and it wouldn't make any difference which way you fit it, but you never know. It might be slightly offset. I'm pretty sure it's not. I think it wouldn't matter which way I fitted it. So I'll try and file it and see if that can make any difference. I'm filing on a flat surface so that we try and keep the bottom of it nice and flat. I guess the other thing we could look at is putting some grease in it. It tends to get a bit messy once you start doing that. Stuff tends to get everywhere. This is silicone grease. I'm going to put a little bit around the gear. It doesn't show up very well on the camera because it's actually clear grease. I want to get a little bit around the actual top of the gear where it's going to rub on the part that we slide it into. We could put a bit more on the teeth in a bit. It really just get messy, this stuff. So I'll put a little bit inside there as well. And a little bit on the surface. Sort of hard to describe. It's sort of got some resistance in there, but it's a smooth operation. So there's a little bit of resistance in there, and I can feel a little bit of binding. I really do want to paint these. I think they look terrible. Looks like we've got an aeroplane overhead. Might be a glider or something. Doesn't sound very big. We get like microlights and things. Okay, I think that's an improvement. Back in there, it's got grease in it and it's spinning now. Yeah, that seems to work quite nicely. Okay, so I've put a little bit of grease on the other gear as well and popped that one in. And I think that is maybe a little bit too much grease in there, but well, I guess I should put the servo back in and see if it made any difference. That seems okay. If I can get it back together. Really convinced about these two screws here. I don't think they're really doing much. I don't think they're long enough. I think that one's just spinning, but it's in there. I mean, it's kind of like located in the servo horn, so it can't really move. Feels like it's moving quite nicely. Now, with regards to the jaw piston, that is new. I did actually do a video where I was reprinting this bar and this piston here, because the original one was really quite rubbish. But I think I lost a lot of the footage and I kind of moved on to other things, so I left it. But basically that is a new piston, it's not the original one, and this is a new bar, and they're fitting in there much nicer. But looking at that, it probably needs to go in first, because I can't see how I can get that in there now. The other thing is we probably have to set this jaw up, and I'm not quite sure how to do it, so this might be a little bit futile. So the bar is marked bottom. That was our one improvement from the original bar. So I guess that has to go downwards. So we must go in like this. So that's the best way to show you that. So the bar is down there. It was, it's now fallen on the floor, on the bench. So the issue is that you have to turn the piston to get the bar to go into it. So I'm not really sure where we should set the servo so that we can turn it into the right position. Because that's not right there, the bar's too low. And I think the servo's turned fully one way. Sure, I read somewhere there is a method to doing this. So the tutorial tells us we should have a 1 centimeter offset in here when the servo is in its center position. I think it actually said 0 degrees, which wouldn't be the center, it would be more like that, I think. Yeah. So maybe that's right, and then the servo will turn. No, that's not right. Depends which way it turns, I suppose. No, that's not right. So that's probably 0. So the problem is you try and set it at one centimetre, but it's sort of at an angle. There's not really much we can do. So I'd say it probably sits there and it can wind in and out. I think it's going to be a bit of trial and error. I think you're supposed to suppose we need this part of the head out of the way. Maybe that's my issue. Let's get rid of that. So basically you've got the servo like that, so the bar is going to go down into the head, servo's going to sit in here. I think that'll go in, and I've got it so that there's some movement. I can turn the servo one way, it'll pull it up, and I can turn the servo the other way and it'll bring it down. So I think that's about right. I think the very first video I made on the InMoov was me installing the jaw servo. It's pretty similar to what I'm doing here now. God knows how many years ago. There's grease all over my hands again. So who's been watching from the beginning of the videos? If you've watched them all, let us know in the comments. It'd be quite interesting to know if people are watching them kind of from beginning to end all the way through, or are they just jumping in on the stuff that interests them. My camera's freaking out with light. I think I put my hands in. Look at that. In, out, in, out. It's really struggling, isn't it? Okay, so I'll probably try to reassemble the head, I guess. So this one's broken. Probably super glue it and leave it overnight. So what I was thinking of doing, just before we completely reassemble this, is to put another little circuit board in here that we can plug these servo headers into. We've got one here for neck rotation and one for the jaw. We'll have two more for the eyes, and I think I'll also bring up the other neck servo into here as well. So we'll need 5 connections. So I was thinking of doing the same as I've done around the rest of the robot and build up one of these little green boards. We could either mount it sort of sideways in here, or I could cut it short and we could put it in the back just here. What I was thinking is we've got good access to these 2 screws here, so I could print a little 3D printed bracket that would accept this board and then just attach onto these 2 screws here. So I think this is how I'm going to arrange it. I've got a row of 5 headers in here for the servos, and I've lined them up so that they exactly line up with the 5 pins on the ribbon cable. So we could just take the yellow connections just straight across into the ribbon cable on the back. So that should be nice and simple, and then we just connect all the reds together and connect them down to this side, and all the blacks together and connect them to that side. So it should be nice and simple, and then I'm going to design a 3D printed bracket to go in here, and we'll mount that in there like that. And I can use these 2 screws here to attach the bracket on. What I sometimes do is use an extra header just to create a support. Just to keep the board level whilst I solder things on. Generally when I build up the circuit boards, I try to put the smallest components on first, the ones with the least amount of height. So I think the next thing to put on would be the black socket. We want that to line up with the yellow pins. So I think that's right. And then lastly we've got this blue power plug to go on here. Now, it would actually make my life easier if I offset it so it lines up with the power pins. I preferred it more in the centre, but I think I will offset it like that. Then we can see the connections exactly line up straight into, well, this one does at least go straight in. That one will have to come down one row. So it's either that or put it there. I might just do that. Doesn't really matter. So that's all the components soldered on. The next thing is to try and make all the connections on the back. Okay, so that's the red power line going in there. So we just now need a black one. I don't think I've got any black cable left, so we'll have to go with brown. I'm just using a little bit of black tape to hold the wires in place whilst I solder them. There's just the power wires going from that blue plug feeding into the positive and negative of the servo headers. It just leaves jumping the yellow pins on the headers across to the ribbon cable. It's going to be a little fiddly. Okay, so I've done it, but I need to just double check that nothing is short circuited. So basically jumped across these ones and then along the power lines. Just need to make sure the power lines are not touching the signals and no signals are touching each other. So I'll put a continuity tester on it just to make sure. If that's good, then we can get on with sorting out a bracket. Now I have got the eye mechanism. This is the very first thing I built on the InMoov. I think I built the face and this eye mechanism. It never did work all that well, and I was always intending that it would probably be either completely replaced or certain parts replaced, because I think a few of the screws sort of broke their fixings off, and the print quality was terrible. It doesn't really, well, I don't think it does anyway, it doesn't really screw to the face, although there are two holes down in there, but I don't think there's anything, no corresponding holes in the head. So what I was thinking is I could probably just put some hot melt glue in here and stick it onto the face. I'm not really sure about the best way of going about that, whether I should probably remove the face and try and make this attachment separately. I think I will try and reinstall it, even if it doesn't fully work properly. We'll at least have sort of something there, even if we don't use the eyes, they'll at least be back in, giving it a slightly better visual look. Yeah, so I think the two holes in here are actually for screwing this fixing bracket on the back. I think that's what those two holes are for. Those screws go through down into those two holes, and I think we are just left with sticking this on to the face with glue. So it'll go something like that. Slightly worried about gluing it. I guess if we use hot melt glue, I guess it would come back off again. I'm just not sure about the exact position, but it kind of seems to want to fit into that position there. The eyes look a little close to the face. Yeah, get the feeling that they wouldn't move if they were that close. I'm going to have a quick look at this. So I really can't decide exactly how that should be glued on there, and what the exact position should be. So I think what I'm going to do is just use the very smallest amount of glue and just stick it on. And if there's a problem, hopefully I'll be able to pull it off again. Sorry, I did that off camera. I've just put a little bit of hot melt glue in there and glued that in. You have to do it very quickly because the hot melt glue goes off very fast. I think I should probably try this out before we install it in the head.
So a little bit random, but we do actually have some good weather at the moment, and I've got the head in pieces, so I thought I might as well take the opportunity and make the good use of that weather to get some of the painting done on some of these parts. I wasn't intending to do this, but I thought I'd take the opportunity. You can see here I've got a couple of the pieces where I've done the filling and sanding, and then I've got a couple more where I've actually done the primer as well. I'm not going to be too concerned about making them perfect, because I probably will come back and redo these again at some point. I thought I'll just make them look a little better than they were when they were bare. I'm considering grinding the head down on this screw and filling over that, and then filling across the join and making this part kind of a permanent join. I don't know how that will work out, but that's what I'm thinking about doing. So what I'm going to do is put some super glue on this part here, the back of this, and I'm going to glue this part on and then fit that screw back in there. With the one screw holding it in, it's kind of sort of flexing like this, so I'm hoping the glue is going to hold that in position, and then I'll have to try and fill this gap. I have a small gap here. I'm not going to worry too much about it at the moment. I'm just going to get the screw back in, hopefully without gluing my hands to it. Yeah, so there's a small, I don't know how much you can see that, there's a small gap there. It doesn't seem to quite line up on this edge either, but it sort of fits together when I put the other pieces on, so again, not going to worry too much about that. So I'll let that glue go off. It can take quite a while to go off, and I'll try and apply some filler across here. So I've put a bit of hot melt glue in here to try and hold the eyes in. I've put these in the head so many times now and the eyes keep falling out, so I've tried to kind of overdo it a bit with the glue. I'm going to try and get another bit down in here. It's quite difficult to line these screws up with the holes. They don't screw into the grey piece here, they actually screw into the sort of structural parts inside, which I think are called the face holders. It's quite awkward to see where the hole is to line them up. You can see it doesn't screw to the grey part. You can see these parts look a little bit different now. I've painted them. As I said before, they're not perfect, but I'll probably sort of do several iterations of gradually refining it and making it better. If I spent all my time painting it, I'd never get the thing built. Now this screw is quite tricky. It goes through the white face part, the grey piece at the side here, and the grey piece at the top. So you have to get all three holes lined up, which I've found could be quite tricky in the past. I think maybe a slightly longer screw would help. Yeah, so it's kind of gone into all three, but they're not closed up. You need to really go into all three when they're all squashed together. Yeah, that looks a little better. Okay. Guess I could do the other side. And now I've got my new bracket that I've printed. So that's going to go in here. Fix on with those two screws there. So what I'll do first, I'll put some hot melt glue around here. So I think I could fit the cover over this side of the head. I'm a little bit worried about if they're going to fit in because I've joined the two halves together. So we've got one long piece now, which fits front to back. But I'm a little nervous that it'll make it more difficult to fit together. There's a little gap down there. Back seems to fit quite nicely, and the front's got a small gap. So normally we'd have 4 screws in the top here. I'm going to try and reduce that down to 2 because I've now got these parts joined together. So I've filled over one of the holes. I think before we go too much further we'll have to sort out these electrical connections in here. So I'll plug the servo cables onto the headers. Doesn't really matter where they go, I can work it out later. And then I'll probably want to try and tidy the cables up a bit. Ribbon cable next, might be a little fiddly. So we want that to go down through the neck. Trying not to twist it. There. It's kind of coming from the board down to the neck. Now the bar for the jaw is kind of probably going to get in our way there. Yeah, probably want to go behind that. Yeah. It'd be nice to get the jaw back on. Kind of fed it up through the bottom. Oops. Reattached it on here and here. We want to do the same with the other side. If I haven't just broken that, I don't think I have. Oh yes, I have. Just snap that off there. Get the jaw in. Okay, so that's the jaw back on. Starting to look like a head again. I think I'm actually 90 degrees out of position there. I think that is in the centre of the servo. It feels nice and smooth, so I need to take that off again. Didn't think about that, did I? So we're almost there. I've bolted the head back onto the neck, so an M8 bolt through there, just making sure we didn't catch any of the wires. And I put plastic caps on each side. So I've got my ribbon cable running down here, 2 power wires, the red and black silicon wires there, and then that one servo cable for the neck tilt, which is this servo here. So I'll have to plug this wire into that there. So I've connected the power cables up into this blue connection here, so that's now all the electrical connections finished. Now this is really satisfying because with one finger that head is just smooth as silk. So we've really solved the neck rotation problem. I'm really satisfied with that, and he's looking really good as well. I'm really pleased that I did decide to paint some of the parts. I didn't do these back pieces. piece on the back of the neck as well is not painted yet. I may replace this bottom part, so we'll leave that for now. And we'll probably be doing the Bob Houston style neck upgrade at some point. So maybe when I dismantle things to upgrade the neck, I can finish off that painting. So I'm really pleased with that. I'm going to leave this video here because this has got really long. I'm really sorry about that. If you've watched it this far, then thanks, you're a star. Thanks for supporting my channel. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.